I'm Grim Jim, the Underteller. I tell the stories the living forgot, and tonight we exhume one that didn't just terrify a small Wisconsin town, it crawled out of a farmhouse and into the heart of Hollywood itself. Though his name was never as infamous as Bundy or Dahmer, Ed Gein's shadow stretched across generations. Alfred Hitchcock, Toby Hooper, and Jonathan Demme all drew inspiration from his twisted psyche to create horror icons such as Norman Bates, Leatherface, and Buffalo Bill. And those movies you rewatch every Halloween, they were stitched together from Gein's reality. The motel, the chainsaw, the skin-wearing killer. They weren't just nightmares, they were his.
Ed Gein's story is not for the faint of heart. It's a tale that challenges our understanding of madness, and the capacity for evil that can fester inside the most unassuming soul. To truly understand the weight of Gein's legacy, we must first return to where it all began and look at the man himself. Born in the rural city of La Crosse, Wisconsin, on August 27, 1906, to George and Augusta Gein, his upbringing was anything but idyllic. His childhood was steeped in fear, repression, and isolation. As a child, Ed was timid, withdrawn, his softness making him an easy target for bullies. Shunned at school, he clung to the only constant in his world, his mother. Yet her attention was a poisoned gift, praise laced with scorn, devotion bound to relentless criticism of both Ed and his brother Henry. His father, George, drifted between jobs, and struggled with depression and alcohol. His drunken rages often ended in violence, leaving young Ed bruised and trembling. Meanwhile, his mother, Augusta, was a fire and brimstone religious fanatic and strict disciplinarian. She viewed the outside world as corrupt and women, other than herself, as vessels of sin and harlots. Ed Gein, a name synonymous with madness, had a disturbing obsession with his mother. Her domination shaped Ed's mind in ways no one could yet comprehend. Psychologists would later suggest her tyranny planted the roots of his obsession, perhaps even forming an Oedipus complex that blurred his sense of identity and morality. After George's death from heart failure in 1940, Ed and Henry's dependence on Augusta deepened. When Henry died 4 years later under suspicious circumstances, mother and son were left completely alone. With the death of both his father and brother, mother and son now had each other entirely to themselves. Their bond, suffocating and absolute, lasted only months before Augusta suffered a debilitating stroke in 1945. Ed cared for her inside their remote, rustic farmhouse, which had no plumbing or electricity. But after suffering a second stroke, Augusta Wilhelmine Gein died in December 1945 at age 67. Her death shattered him. His only friend and center of his world was gone. Ed's life spiraled into a series of horrifying crimes. Locals later described Ed as quiet, polite, and trustworthy, the last person anyone would suspect of evil. But isolation warped his mind. With her passing, Edward Theodore Gein became the Butcher of Plainfield, known for body snatching and grave robbing. Other names included Eddie the Mad Butcher, the Plainfield Ghoul, the Plainfield Butcher, or the Plainfield Killer. After Augusta's death, he closed off her bedroom and sitting room and preserved them as a macabre shrine to his mother. However, he allowed the rest of the farm to sink into filthy decay. His grief soon took on grotesque new forms. Augusta had taught Gein to believe that the soul could live beyond death, and in his despair he reportedly tried to dig up her body. However, her coffin was surrounded by concrete, making this impossible. So instead, he scoured obituaries for women resembling his mother, digging up their graves to bring them home. From 1947 and 1952, he exhumed the bodies of freshly buried women, bringing the corpses back to his farmhouse. There, he would flay and preserve their skin, creating furnishings such as a lampshade, waste basket, wall art, and chair covers made from their human skin. Gein also engaged in the bizarre act of dismembering and skinning corpses. He even donned the skin of his victims, fashioning suits and masks, grotesque attempts to resurrect the only woman he ever loved, his mother. According to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, Ed said his deep connection with his mother made him want to become more like a woman. He visited her grave over and over until grief twisted into something darker. He became obsessed with the idea of becoming her, or at least feeling close to her again. Gein's crimes ultimately caught the attention of authorities when two women vanished, leading to his arrest. Gein, who never traveled far from the small rural community of Plainfield, had turned to murder because the supply of suitable bodies in local graveyards had dried up. In 1957, he was arrested in connection to the disappearance of 58-year-old hardware store owner, Bernice Warden. Police went to his home after finding blood stains on the floor of Warden's hardware shop. Receipts showed that the last customer she had served was Gein. When investigators entered the Gein farmhouse, they discovered a nightmare beyond their imagination. Among the many macabre relics were the remains of Warden's headless body, her torso disemboweled like a deer and hanging upside down from the ceiling. He had shot her in the head before driving her body home, stripping her and hanging her up in the summer kitchen of his farmhouse. Her head was found in a sack, and her heart was in a plastic bag near the stove, as though he had been preparing some grim ritual. Those who knew Bernice Warden said she reminded Ed of his mother, and in that resemblance, his obsession found its next victim. As they ventured further into the filthy and stinking house, police found horror after horror, sending even the most hardened officers staggering outside. The ghastly discoveries included human skulls mounted on bedposts, food bowls made from skulls, and masks crafted from human skin. But most notably, investigators found the infamous woman suit, fashioned from the skins peeled from various corpses that Gein had begun to stitch together shortly after the death of his beloved mother, enabling him to literally, as he viewed it, crawl into her skin and become her. These grotesque trophies transformed Gein from a quiet recluse into one of history's most chilling figures. When questioned, Gein confessed in chilling detail to all his crimes, including the killing of Bernice Warden and 54-year-old bar owner Mary Hogan 3 years earlier. He claimed the body parts were not victims but corpses he had exhumed. After his arrest, Gein was deemed unfit for trial due to a schizophrenia diagnosis. He spent his final years in mental health facilities until his death in 1984. While not as renowned as Dahmer or Bundy, Ed Gein's crimes inspired iconic horror films, including characters like Norman Bates in Psycho, Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs, and Leatherface in the Texas Chain Saw Massacre. When author Robert Bloch wrote his 1959 novel Psycho, he was living in Wisconsin, just miles from Gein's Plainfield farmhouse. Bloch drew direct inspiration from the case, blending Gein's isolation, his obsession with his mother, and his grotesque habits into the fictional Norman Bates. The novel became Alfred Hitchcock's groundbreaking 1960 film, forever changing horror cinema by exploring the psychology of a killer rather than relying on the supernatural. Before Gein's crimes, audiences had only supernatural beings like werewolves and vampires to terrify them. Until the unimaginable became reality. Now, Netflix revisits his chilling life in Monster, the Ed Gein story, co-created by Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan. Actor Charlie Hunnam steps into the role of Gein, capturing the chilling duality of a man both ordinary and monstrous. True crime historian Harold Schechter has dubbed Gein the original psycho, emphasizing his unique psychological profile. Schechter notes that Gein's relationship with his mother played a crucial role in his depravity. Ed Gein's story reminds us that sometimes the monster lurking in the house is not supernatural at all, but entirely human. For those who dare to delve deeper into the true story behind Psycho, the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs, I recommend exploring the books that chronicle Gein's life and legacy in haunting detail, including Harold Schechter's Deviant, the shocking true story of Ed Gein, the original Psycho. Check the description below for links to learn more, and remember, every click helps support this channel's journey into the dark corners of history.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories, and hit the notification bell to stay informed.